have regrets from David Kaiser. He's in Ottawa. It's work, and it's sort of our annual general meeting for the whole area. So he had to be there, and I know he would have loved to have been here. Also, Leo Boland, he had to be at work today, and now one of the committee that's running today is finance, and past chairperson Susan Humphrey will be taking Leo's place. Okay, and I note that Nick Edge is not with us, and Dave Shields. So we have 4 away. That means because there's 8 of us, we do not have a quorum, but we certainly can continue. There's only one item that has a recommendation on that one. The second one in program assisted achievement. What we'll do is we'll have the presentation, ask questions, get answers, and then we'll just postpone the recommendation to full board and deal with it then. So it's like a regular committee meeting, but not. And with that, I'll turn it over to the chair of Program and Student Achievement, and that's Trustee Mike Ganati.
Thank you, Chair Morris. Yes, the Program Achieving Committee of September 23rd or September 13th, 2022. Are there any agenda amendments? None noted. I move to approve the agenda. I'm looking for a seconder, Susan Humphreys. Are there any conflicts of interest? The 2 items? Seeing none. Thank you. We have 2 items in this committee. The first one is Information and Communication Technologies Annual Action Plan for years 2022-23. I'd like to turn it over to our Superintendent Cousineau to introduce the speaker who's going to talk on this topic.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. As superintendent new to the ICT portfolio, I feel I need to demonstrate some certainly some awareness of technology. So using my stylus, probably for the second time since I've had the laptop, but no, it's a great pleasure to have Doug with us to present the annual action plan for technology, for information technology for the district. You will certainly see the connection to the plan that came before you last year, and partway through the year, you actually voted on a recommendation to allow us to use some reserve funds to implement a 1-to-1 strategy for grades 7 to 12. So you will certainly see some continuation there. In terms of key areas of immediate focus for this year, we obviously have the implementation of that 1-to-1 access, certainly a focus on cybersecurity, and also network modernization projects. So I'll turn it over to Doug. Doug's no stranger to us, and he will lead us through the action plan and highlight things that have been added since you saw the plan last year. You'll recall that the plan was multi-year because a lot of the initiatives in the department are either cyclical or multi-year in their implementation. So Doug will walk us through the plan, highlight some key areas, and then we'll certainly answer any questions you may have. So Doug, over to you.
Perfect. Thanks, Arnold. And I actually don't mind starting late. I think they had me on for 30 minutes. There's not 30 minutes here, I don't think, but we'll see. So as Arnold talked about, we are talking about the multi-year ICT plan that was approved in February of 2022. So we've all gone through it already. What we want to talk about is basically the items that we're going to be working on this year, the initiatives, and some new topics that have come out, and just give you an update on stuff that we're already working on. So we'll just kind of move on with the plan. And I'm going to scroll down here, and as you watch the plan on screen, you'll see that items in red, and those are the items that we're going to talk about. So there's a little updates on the initiative. So the initiative, the area of focus is to the left-hand side. You'll see in the first column, it's cybersecurity. And the items that I have in red are just kind of updates. So in regards to cybersecurity, one of the things we talked about was the hiring of an ICT security analyst. Very difficult task. It's hard to get anybody in this region. It's hard to get anybody for the amount of money that we can afford to pay for that position. So we posted, I think it's 4 times we posted that position. We were unable to fill it. We filled it for 4 days at one time, but and then that person was stolen away by another organization. So, so we've had some struggles with that. So taking the lead of some of the other boards in Ontario, it was decided that we would try promoting from within. So in this case, you'll see in red that we hired Andrew LeBaire. And if anybody knows Andrew, Andrew was a technician for us for a long time. He's been in the Pembroke, the Petawawa Deep River area for a number of years. And he's very passionate about security, and that's what I was looking for. I was looking for somebody who wanted to take on that task, was eager to learn, was willing to get the certifications needed to protect the organization. And, you know, going through the interview process, Andrew stood out to us kind of deal. So we offered him the position. Right now, he's doing kind of a hybrid. He's still trying to work up in that area of the county, doing some of the technical work while we fill a couple positions here. But he has started on his training as well. So Andrew will be based out here at the board office, and he'll be taking on this role. And there are some caveats that he had to get kind of deal. There's a certification that he has to get within 6 years. It is a very long, a very in-depth certification. You actually need 5 years worth of hands-on work in order to get in the security field, in order to be able to even write the test. So it's something that we talked to Andrew about, and we built in his agreement that he would get that down the road eventually. But I think he's going to be a great addition. He's got a lot on his plate to learn, but it's nice to have somebody that can really focus on cybersecurity and not the 5 or 6 people that are trying to do it now on top of their additional roles. So you can see that Andrew actually started with us on August 15th. So he's in the position now doing a few things, but he'll be moving over there very shortly into full-time cybersecurity. Now, one of the things that we hoped with the cybersecurity was to utilize ECNO for a number of the other initiatives that we had along those lines. So develop and implement cybersecurity policies and procedures. ECNO is struggling as well right now. What happened is we lost the RISA, so the Regional Information Security Analyst for this area. Took a position somewhere else as well, was offered bigger bucks and moved on. So we lost our local person that we were utilizing among the number of Eastern Ontario boards that had him. So we were paying a small fee to access that resource. But worse is we lost the provincial person. So the PISO, which is the head of the RISA program. So Steve Payne, who, if you remember, Steve did the presentation for us here. Steve has taken a position as the Chief Information Officer at Eastern Ontario Catholic. And the Chief Information Officer from Eastern Ontario Catholic moved on to Otto Carleton, I believe. So there's been some movement at high level positions in the province as well. So that position's not been filled yet. So the RISA team throughout the province do not have that provincial person to go to yet. So that's coming. I think the position is closed now, but they haven't interviewed or filled it yet. So it's, you know, not just our board that was struggling. Provincially, they're struggling to get good security people to fill these roles. So we'll have to wait. We'll do what we can without those provincial leads. But eventually those positions will get filled and we'll be able to utilize those resources as well. And you'll see up there our new Regional Information Security Analyst is Scott Reed. So Scott is another person who came up with another board who, you know, passionate about security, no real training kind of deal, but we'll be working towards getting his certifications. The next big change to the plan was with regards to networking, and you can see this one is all red. This is a brand new initiative from the ministry. So 6 years ago, they came out with it's called the Broadband Modernization Project. And the initiative, you know, that project was designed to get 1 megabit per second per student in all our schools. So basically get high-speed internet access into all our locations, no matter where the schools were located. Again, it's 6 years ago. Some of the school boards are just wrapping up. We were very fortunate. We were one of the first 5 in the province to finish it. But things change. Technology changes. So the new initiative is a project called SASE. So Secure Access Service Edge. It was SD-WAN, Software Defined Wide Area Network. That's what we were on. And now the new one is called SASE. And what the difference is is with SD-WAN, in every location, every building, we had a physical firewall, a piece of hardware that we had to replace every few years. Very costly to maintain it. The maintenance bill for just those devices for the year is almost $100,000 every year. When they brought in the modernization program, we got money for that to do the implementation, but there was no money going forward to handle the maintenance and the replacement. So it's a very costly system. What they're looking at now with SASE is it puts everything in the cloud. So it takes those physical devices out of the schools, and now all the security is handled on the edge of the cloud. So there's no physical devices to replace every few years. There's no physical devices to maintain. Everything is filtered through the cloud. So that's the next service that we're working on. Again, it's a costly endeavor to do it. But we will be taking that on over this time. And I put some highlights, just some notes about what SASE really is. And it's kind of a neat name, but so you can read those when you have an opportunity.
Doug, can you share those slides with us afterwards?
Yes.
Because the new pieces that you've inserted aren't in our.
Yes, I seen that. I heard
If you
that.
could do that.
Yeah, we'll make sure that we recirculate the updated
Perfect.
copy.
Yeah,
Thank
for
you.
sure.
Because my eyesight's not as good today as it is sometimes.
And then the other piece that we want to implement along with that new networking is a way to monitor the networking, to be proactive in case we know we're getting hit by attack quicker and that we're notified quicker. And there's an application called 40 Monitor that we'll be looking at putting in. And that's a $45,000 cost per year just to maintain that application. But it protects the network and it gives us access to reports that we've never had access to before, to know exactly, that fellows faced an attack when we didn't even know it kind of is. So it's notification, it's being proactive. So it's tools like this that we do have to utilize to protect ourselves. One of the items that we had talked about over the plan and we'd really hoped to do is software application centralization. After numerous talks with finance, it was kind of decided that this wasn't really possible. The reason is because there's so many different applications that are paid for by so many different sources of funding that it would be almost impossible for finance to manage. So we've kind of shelved this project just for a little while to see, what else can we do? How can we handle it going forward? The next project to talk about is, as Ronald mentioned, the one-to-one mobile deployment. So thankfully, we received approval to go ahead with that project, and yeah, it's taking $940,000 from reserves to do it. We started that project actually a little earlier than expected. We thought we wouldn't get started until September, but because of some devices that we had and some funding that we had, we did do a number of schools, and you can see the ones that we have already completed. So Central and Admaston, because of the size, they already had enough devices to do the one-to-one for the grade 7s and 8s. Because remember, one-to-one is 7 till 12. So they had enough devices that their 7 and 8s had a 1-to-1 ratio, and their K to 6 still had the 3-to-1 ratio that we had originally talked about maintaining. So we didn't have to put any additional devices in there, but we did put 25 extra into Beachburg, 56 in the Highview, 412 into Armpire High School. So those are gone, those are down there. And again, we're dropping these devices off, and it really is the responsibility of the school to determine where they're going to best utilize the devices. Whether they put 30 into an English class, a mathematics class, how they want to do that, but it really is the school to decide where they can best use those extra Chromebooks. OHS 263 and MVD 126. So those schools are done. We'll be tackling the other sites hopefully sooner than later, but we have some real restraints right now, of course, with technology. It's almost impossible now to get devices. We're being told laptops anywhere from 6 to 8 months right now. We're being told projectors could be into the next year, into 2024, not 2023. So we're really struggling with getting equipment right now. So we really have to be proactive to get our orders in quick, and hopefully we'll get into that queue that we'll be able to get some devices somewhere. But as soon as they come available, they're typically snapped up by not just other boards, other organizations all over the country. So it is tough right now, but we'll do our best to meet these deadlines that we said we're going to. As long as we can get the equipment in, we'll be able to pull this off. So. Talk about the mobile classroom application. There will be no regular deployment of devices into elementary schools this year, or classrooms, because we'll be doing the one-to-one. So there'll be the regular schedule that we've been on, replacing devices for the last 5 years, will not take place this year because of the one-to-one. It'll be delayed till next year. And then I just highlighted a couple projects that may mean something to you, just so you're aware. Of course, the devices that you guys are all currently using, trustees, superintendents, the director, administrative assistants for superintendents will all be replaced this year. They're scheduled to be replaced. So they are on our annual replacement cycle this year. Other big projects that we continue to work on, the parent portal, of course, and the electronic records management system. And I think those are two things that we're continuing to work on, continuing to build towards. But those are two big items that are on the hit list of things that we want to accomplish. So they may not be accomplished this year, but we'll definitely be working towards them this year for sure. Talked about the devices already. And then one last initiative that we're working on that we've added that's new, it's relatively low down in the system, is we've realized the need after going through the pandemic of for students who didn't have access to internet at home. And we wanted to provide them a source that they could get access if they had to do projects, if they had to do any kind of research at all. So what we've done is we've put a set of Chromebooks and some Wi-Fi devices, so Wi-Fi internet devices, in every secondary school library right now. So if a student needed access to the internet and they didn't have it at home, they could go to the library, sign out one of their internet devices and take it home for a period of time. So they at least have some internet access to do their work. And that's something that we've only put a limited number in just as a pilot to test it. But if it proves successful, then we can increase the number of those devices in the library, just so every kid has access. So that's it for the updates on the plan. Any questions with regards?
And maybe before we entertain questions from a governance perspective, I think trustees need to know that we are being very mindful of recruitment, retention, and succession planning. As Doug mentioned, like one of the positions was from within, so training is involved. But we are very mindful and are being proactive in terms of having the conversations, reaching out to organizers, making sure that we are within that ballpark. Because I think everyone would agree that in today's age, if we don't have that infrastructure, it will impede our ability to deliver programs. So we're being really mindful of this. So
it is, yeah, it's a tough environment right now for technology staff. It really is. We've had numerous positions open for a long time, posted multiple times. I remember the days where we would get 90 applicants for a technician position, and I'm very happy if I get one or two right now. I really am. And I've reached out to the college and asked where all their students are going from the system technician program, but they're also being scooped up because every other organization is in the same position as we are. So yeah, it's tough, but we're getting through it. And hopefully, I'm really hoping that within the next couple of weeks, we'll have all our vacant positions filled for at least for a while, that we can get on to some of these projects and get working on them. But kudos to the entire staff who worked extra time this summer to get their work done, being very short staffed. So I'm very proud of everything that they've done and what they accomplished, and we'll continue pushing forward to get, meet these deadlines that we said we would do. So
we're offering styluses as part of the onboard.
yeah.
Any questions? Marjorie?
Thank you. Doug, thanks for all that. I wish my home internet worked as fast as your house. Wow, I didn't hear half of what you said because I guess I'm used to the slow stuff. And I also, like Susan, couldn't read that, so I look forward to getting it. One question I would like to ask immediately is I got Andrew, that part of your name, but I didn't get the second name. Lieber? Andrews?
LeBert, yeah.
I'm sorry?
Andrew LeBert.
There. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Just one question, Doug, and
Sure.
that is, I know there's competition to get devices now. It sounds pretty heavy. I know that we discussed this a year or so ago, and we seem to be doing fairly well when it comes to the returning of devices. How are we doing now? Like in more recent times when it came to, like the return of devices, because it sounds like everybody's in competition to buy the new ones. So I mean, the fewer we can lose, or
Yeah, absolutely.
how are we
So,
doing there?
well, we're fortunate that we do have quite a supply downstairs that were returned. I was pretty impressed with the numbers that came back from the pandemic devices. We bought roughly 1,200 pandemic funded devices that we received additional ministry funding for last year. So we're probably in the 90% and 92% return rate, which was very good. Now, there's a couple things we can do, which we're very fortunate. We have the ability to lock those devices out when they're not returned. So we spent, some of the staff spent the summer in the storage room, going through every device that was marked off, marking on a master list. Anything that wasn't located, we secured, we bricked it basically. So we throw it, it can't be used anywhere else. Throw a switch. There's a message on the screen that says, please return to your school. So, that forces some of those devices back in their hands, but there's always going to be loss.
Yeah.
Even in a normal school, normal school year, when we put mobile devices in their schools, they're a little harder to manage than when we had labs. Of course, devices aren't going to walk away or move around. When they're in the schools, we really don't have any control. We drop, 200 devices off at the school, and it's up to the school to manage them and kind of keep control of them. So until we go back 4 years later to do that replacement, that's when we really notice if anything's gone missing from that site. So it's difficult to manage in the mobile environment, but I was very impressed with the last round. I think we lost more during the first couple of years of the pandemic than we've lost over the last couple, that was for sure, through the virtual learning and e-learning, everything that took place last year. So
Just one last comment. That's sort of what I was hoping I would hear from you, because that sounds like there's quite an improvement in that curve.
absolutely.
The reason I brought it up is I just recently read a couple of boards are really, really struggling where their numbers aren't very good. And it's
Yeah.
been very costly,
Yeah.
especially even if they got the money to replace them, they're having trouble getting them. So
Yeah, I think we're very fortunate too that, the principals are so well attached to their families and their schools, that they can easily reach out and get those devices back. And they've been very good with us. We send a report to them saying, identifying which ones are missing that we did get back and where we think they are, because we can go in and see the sign out sheets and stuff. But they've been very good at getting those devices back into our hands, and kudos to them as well. Appreciate all the work they've done.
I'm just gonna add to this. We've heard often during the pandemic, we've heard senior team talk about principals saying our principals really know their school community. And the relationships they have with families, again, pays off when it comes to retrieving devices in this case. But having our principals, vice principals, and other staff really connected to our school communities is part of what we do.
We talked about all the changes in the networking structure that the ministry is pushing towards. Some of those monitoring tools would be very useful in identifying where those devices are, if they are showing up somewhere on the network, and locating where they are. So all these tools and utilities that we have coming down will all help reclaim devices like that when we can't find them. Because they're everywhere. They're in drawers, they're in cupboards, or we can't go through everything when we do a search of the school, but eventually they do tend to turn up. So
thank you.
I have
Freeze.
a couple of quick questions, Doug, if I may. The electronic records management piece, I know it is a colossal job, I know.
very
We've talked about it for quite a long time, but we also know how important it is. So are we kind of on the realm of, getting an RFP out to get that done, or where are we at on that? Yes.
So we have been, the last year, the ministry provided funding, so we did some preliminary work to get us on track to fully understanding what workflows, paper copies, hard copies, working documents we would be looking at. I believe OECM has undertaken an RFP process, so if the outcome would work for us, we would just use that rather than undertake it our own. We have a small working group that's going to go on a couple of field trips, and I recognize that this was done a few years ago, but given the change in the way that we work, we decided that we needed to update that information. And we're also waiting eagerly for the new executive assistant position in the DOA, because we're going to hand that over to that person
Very quickly.
But we're going to, what we're trying to do.
Yeah.
Yeah, over this last year is do all of the heavy lifting and the background work so that we can answer as many questions as we can, and then work collaboratively so that we can really move that forward, because we understand the risks that we are facing with the paper world that we are living in right now, and also the efficiencies that we could find and sort of lighten the workload of, if we're working electronically, just storing electronically, right? And then the risk of purge. So we are moving slowly
Easy
forward.
to find stuff, hopefully, eventually.
The fact that OECM has completed that RFP process on our behalf basically is a huge
Oh, absolutely.
piece of the puzzle, because now we can, there's, I think 3 or 4 vendors selected. We can easily have those people in to do presentations on what their system, as long as we know what we're looking for in a workflow. You put it towards them and it's already done. So there's a few months of time that normally be eaten by that RFP process that we won't have to worry about, which is good.
You can chunk it off then too, I suppose, over the next couple of years, because we
Correct.
can't do it all at once.
Yeah, I think we had originally talked about starting centrally kind of deal with whether it's HR or finance, one of the key departments, and then eventually, you know, working our way out to other departments and then into schools as well.
Other quick question, I know that we are replacing a number of Chromebooks and laptops and those things. So what do we do with those now? I know before we had somebody who would buy those and reuse them or whatever. Are we still in that situation where
Yeah,
we
correct.
can
So
make good use of them?
Yeah, so we still have a contract with Green Tech, it was a recycling company, electronics recycling company out of Toronto. And again, that contract is done through OECM, which was nice. So we didn't have to go out and find one ourselves. So what happens is, yeah, we collect all these devices, we do a low level wipe of the devices to make sure all the data is gone off it. We're not in the, we don't check for, you know, screens broken or anything like that at that point. They go into storage. When we accumulate enough, we call Green Tech, they come in and pick it up. We actually provide them with a listing of everything that we have. They estimate what they can afford to pay for that. And the numbers are pretty good. Like we do get some very good checks from them for the devices that we have. And then we take that money that we receive from those devices and then roll them back into our repair budget. Because the cost of repairs, we don't, when schools are allowed to buy devices. So say Renfrew Collegiate decides, you know, they come into some money, they want to buy 100 devices, they go and buy 100 Chromebooks. We still have to provide support for those devices, although we get no additional funding for it. So screens break, we have to buy new screens, we have to pay for techs to go out and maintain those devices. So that's where that money is fed back into and utilized to cover those kind of additional costs that we don't budget for through the year kind of deal, because we don't know what they really are going to be. So,
That's good. I was assuming we were still in that kind of. mode, but
absolutely,
it's,
yeah, and I think it's been a great, actually, I think Catholic Board has signed on with them now as well, because they had contacted us about them, and I think they're utilizing them well. So it is a great little venture and it works well. And yeah, I've been very impressed with the service that they're able to provide to us. So
And the whole cybersecurity piece, I can't imagine all the ins and outs of that. It's got to be a bit of a nightmare. So-
yeah, it's tough, especially when, you know, there's so much time, things that we have to do related to our insurance. Osby, you know, the insurance policy that we have for cybersecurity, they have a guidelines of things, documents that we have to have in place. One of them is a cybersecurity incident response plan. What happens when? Who do you contact? Who's involved in fighting that battle when you have that? It's not if you're attacked, it's when you're attacked, right? So it's, you know, just maintaining that document is a huge piece. And that's one of Andrew's undertakings now, is making sure that's current and kept up to date. And people leave and people move into new roles. You need to know who do we contact? Who's going to be responsible for, you know, notifying the trustees? Who's going to be responsible for notifying the director that something's gone down? Who's going to handle the public facing those newscasts, the radio story, you know, who's going to do all that? And that's all in that document. So it's like a guideline of everything that we have to do. Who do we contact at their insurance company when things go down? And our breach coach, every board has a breach coach assigned to them already in case they're attacked. So how do we contact them and what are the next steps? So it's a playbook basically of what we have to do. And it's just a lot of work to keep current, but there's a number of other documents that need to be done as well in order just to maintain our insurance. So there's a lot of work involved in doing it.
Anyway, thank you to you and your team, because I know that you work diligently and provide wonderful service to our schools and our students. So thank you for that. Appreciate that.
Next, Marjorie.
Yes, thank you. I would like to repeat those thanks, Doug. As you may know, I'm chair of the audit committee at the moment, and the issue of cybersecurity has been on our agenda for years now, gradually going from there to there, right, like a wedge.
Absolutely.
It's now very high on our agenda, and I know that the things that have been organized by our internal audit team for the whole of Eastern Ontario Catholic and public boards, and I know that each time the topic comes up, there is a discrete recognition of the Renfrew County District School Board being a bit ahead of the curve. And I credit you with that, and you and your team, and I thank you for it.
Yeah, I'm so excited about finally get somebody in that position and get us moving forward on that cybersecurity front. So
We do have a meeting tomorrow, and this is on our agenda. And I will.
thank you for driving this forward, because we really needed that little push to.
Session today. Thank you.
Thank you.
And lastly, Mr. Morris.
I'm really pleased that you found someone who you know is you know willing and able to take on the cybersecurity file.
Yeah.
And I have no doubt at all that he's going to be a real success. I know Andrew reasonably well. I've we encountered many times at Valor. But why did you have to take it from Petawawa? He will do a really good job.
Right, he is, like, yeah, the one thing I was looking for, again, we know that we had to train in-house, that was the only option that we had. And I was really looking for somebody that was truly passionate about cybersecurity, and that really came through in Andrew's interview, which was very nice. So I think he's gonna do a great job as well, and I just wanna get him into that role full time to get him really, tackling some of these tasks for sure, so,
Perfect.
yeah. Thank you.
No more questions? Okay, thank you. Move on to our second item.
Yeah.
And thank you very much. Our second item is program services review cycle for 2022-23 school year, year 2 of the implementation. I'd like to give the floor to our director, Mr. Buffoni.
Good afternoon, and through you, Mr. Chair, appreciate that. Just a quick point from the Board of Trustees. I know with missing a few members of the board, this is a report for which there is an action, so to speak, but we'll defer that action to the board meeting on the 27th of September without quorum, as mentioned earlier, and I'll bring a summary of that for the trustees who weren't here today on the 27th. This is really a report to look at the renewed plan for a cyclical review of programs and services for the current school year offered by the district. And of course, it is part of the current multi-year strategic plan, hence the year 2 of implementation of this cyclical review. Excuse me. As outlined, the intent of that is to ensure that all students, staff, and school communities in the district have access to evidence-informed programs and/or services of the highest possible quality system-wide, and that's something we continue to work on and refine over time as an organization, being a learning-centered organization. The review cycle is influenced and impacted by annual plans of action, one of which we just saw moments ago, associated with the multi-year strategic plan. As outlined since we began the cyclical review of programs and services, hard to believe, but well over 5 years now, there are 3 types of review, and I'll just very quickly provide a brief reminder for the Board of Trustees. You'll know this information very well. Formal reviews of programs under services conducted by staff are really led by a member of the senior team with roles and responsibilities in that particular portfolio area, and include a number of key elements, including an environmental scan, excuse me, of other programs and services of a similar nature in other jurisdictions, if that's appropriate and value added, feedback from a broad range of stakeholders involved in the program or services. So those formal reviews really speak to outreach to our stakeholders, current status of where that program or service is in the district, and recommendations to be adopted by the Board of Trustees moving forward. Program and/or service implementation and monitoring is really subsequent to a formal review. It's our ability over time to look at what recommendations were made and really judge over time how well we're implementing and we're putting in place, for lack of a better word, what was decided by the Board of Trustees at that formalized review. The third piece is ministerial reviews of curriculum policy documents or other program or policy memoranda initiated by the ministry, and that sort of closes off the third area. Something that's been of note, and I'm really missing this, to be frank, with the Board of Trustees and senior staff. The Ministry of Education used to release a 7-year cycle outline of what curriculum documents would be reviewed and when, and I really miss that because it would allow us as an organization to prepare over time for what was coming. Unfortunately, that hasn't been the case for the Ministry of Education the last number of years. We sort of are made aware of what they're looking at, but then the release kind of gets, in the terminology of the day, dropped. And sometimes it's dropped very late. One of the most recent and important ones was in June of a school year for implementation in September, which changes the way centrally you can support or not, quite frankly, staff in schools and central departments. So we've been missing that sort of long-range plan from the ministry. It's one of the things through code that we're asking the ministry for, to the best of their ability. I also realize times have changed, things happen on a dime. The pandemic period has influenced that, no doubt, but that ability to have a longer range plan of what's being reviewed and when, especially when they put optional or soft implementation dates versus hard implementation dates, which means what it must be mandated in, is very helpful. So I just wanted to put that on the table and to share with you for the current school year the following curriculum policy documents have been put in place as renewed or new in a sense. Science and technology, grade 1 to 8. Grade 9 science, that's de-streamed. Grade 10 civics and citizenship. Grade 10 mathematics as an addenda to a previously released document, along with the grade 9 mathematics released for the fall of 2021. For a current status this school year, our formal program review is, of course, the secondary school review, as you know well, including FSL programming at the secondary level. And it'll continue to serve as our predominant focus for the balance of this school year. As you well know, there are a series of topics or themes for exploration, including program pathways, student success initiatives, experiential learning, opportunities, virtual learning environments, and of course, transitions to and from secondary school. The working group for the secondary school review was reconvened this past spring and will be continuing into the fall in order to resume the deliberations we need to have around programs and or services offered at the secondary level. And recommendations from this committee will be brought forward to the Board of Trustees for consideration, likely towards the end of this calendar year. Just for the Board of Trustees, we look like we're very close to have locking in the dates for those reviews by secondary school. Shelley, thanks to her efforts, will be out to you shortly, just letting you know when the various dates are based on availability of those schools. Looking for the trustees of the area, of course, that open invitation to join us if you're available for those. And the reason we'll be bringing recommendations likely at the end of the current school year, or at the very latest, the very beginning of next, pardon me, at the end of the current calendar year, or the very latest, the beginning of the next calendar year, is because many of those decisions will impact the following school year. We would need to have those decisions in place to plan accordingly. Further, FSL programming at the elementary level will continue to be monitored for implementation as a follow-up to the multi-year expansion through the elementary phase of the vision exercise. This is the last year that we'll be monitoring that. So we've put that monitoring in place while we expanded for the first 5 years. It's not that any of that work discontinues. We just won't monitor it in the same way because it's up and running now in all families of schools and well underway. And so we will shift our attention to monitoring the implementation of other aspects. And I'll bring you the attachments that show that succinctly. What we will have to do, however, at the elementary level that's closely tied to this is begin to have a look at the monitoring of English with core French programming, especially with the popularity of our French immersion programs at the elementary level. There is an impact on other programs we offer, especially in dual track sites that offer both programs, but also for the county as the whole. So at some point in time, we will be looking at English programming moving forward, just to make sure that we have all of our programs of the highest possible quality and that we're looking at our numbers over time in that way. In addition, the 3-year action plan prepared by Information and Communication Technologies will be reviewed for monitoring and implementation, as Superintendent Kuzno and Manager Fiebig just presented, with that shift 1-to-1 access to device ratio for 7 to 12 and 3-to-1 in K to 6. Special services will also continue to be reviewed for program implementation and monitoring based on the recommendations outlined in the Special Education Review Plan of November 2019. That's another good example of a formal review whose recommendations would be implemented over time. Much to Trustee Humphreys' comment, it's not all done in one shot. And so that would likely be monitored over a 3 to 5 year period to ensure those recommendations are brought forward. Also, although not identified as one of the programs or services reviewed formally, nor a program service for implementation or monitoring, board administration will continue to be an area of review by senior staff, led through our Superintendent Burns and in corporate services, in order to ensure compliance with ministry directives as related to our infrastructure. And the ongoing review of our schools and central departments in this capacity will form part of the annual budgetary process. When there's efficiencies of scale that we can achieve, we'll look to do so. And I want to thank Superintendent Barnes for her leadership and always having that as one of the key elements that we look at. Final point for consideration, employee services was previously scheduled for a cyclical review as part of our 4 key services. So the idea in these is that we would rotate employee services, corporate services, program services, special services on some type of a reasonable schedule over a 5 to 10 year period. Employee services, due to the extensive workload on the Human Resources Department as a result of the operational realities of the pandemic, but also the next round of labor negotiations we're moving into. This review has been rescheduled for 2023, 2024. So I appreciate from staff's perspective that we've deferred this a couple of times here, but we think it's the right thing to do, all things considered with the context we've had for employee services over the last 5 years, extraordinary period of time sandwiched by 2 late rounds of negotiation. So we'll move that forward to the upcoming school year. And also adult and continuing education, which was mentioned by the Board of Trustees as an area that they'd like further exploration, has also been added as a formal review this upcoming school year of 2023, 2024, not the current one, for the same reason. We think the secondary one's going to be fulsome enough, and we're just trying to space these out. So just to share, you'll see in your package attachments A and B, 3-year plan last year, this year, and next year, where you've got all of those succinctly laid out in a single chart. And you'll see, for instance, as mentioned, the FSL Elementary will phase its way off of the plan when we go in next year, and other things will step into it, like FSL at secondary in its place and other. You'll see the curricular release from the Ministry of Education, and then attachment B, a history of the previous approximately 5 years of reviews, so that really on those 2 charts, you've got all of the reviews, formal or otherwise, that we've done in the district over the past decade. So if there's any questions through you, Mr. Chair, happy to field.
Any questions? Trustee Humphries.
Just one quick question. To do with the adult and continuing education, so according to attachment B, we did have a review in 16 and 17. Were those formal reviews or were they
In
less
that,
formal? I'm not sure.
yeah, a really good point. The April 16th, I can't speak on behalf of what took place. I know there was a report that came forward to the board because I wasn't here as director. The May 2017 one, I can say, was not a formal review in the way we've done formal reviews since I, shaped the cyclical review in this nature. And so the idea next year would be to do a more formalized review, reach out to stakeholders. What do they see with respect to adult and continuing ed? What's happening in other areas? So it would be more formalized than what took place in my 3rd month in
Yeah,
2017.
as I recall it too, I was thinking it was a fairly
It's a report.
report. It was more of a report. You're exactly right. Where I think that's really good to see that coming up. I think it's perhaps a bit overdue. It seems to be an area that sometimes maybe just gets, I don't know, left out a little bit. And I think it's such an advantage to our communities out there. So I'm pleased to see that's going to be on for formal review next year.
Through you, Mr. Chair, Trustee Humphries raised a good point. One of the things that, 2 parts. One is part of the consultation, and we'll extend the invitation for the adult and continuing education to all of our trustees. I know it's not done by area per se, the way the secondary schools are, but we'll extend that invitation because they will be included in that secondary school review. There's a tie sort of to the post-secondary for adult and continuing education. So we are going to go out to that staff community this year, which will help feed that. And of course, Superintendent Kuzno, having responsibility in this area, will have a chance over the course of this year to get a bit of a feel for where things are at. We've made some changes in the Petawawa area and the shift to take that internal at Pineview. And so it will be a good opportunity this year to also put some of that baseline or background data to help shape however we position the more formalized review next year.
That'll be great. Thank you. That's great.
Any other questions? None noted. Thank you, Director.
I will defer the.
Yes, you will defer the recommendation. And thank you. A mover that who close the pardon me?
German?
Yeah.
Move to adjourn.
Yeah, direct and seconded by Brian Morris. Thank you very much. Meeting is adjourned. Pardon me, all in favor? Helps.
4 of us.
There's only 4 of us here. Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, that was, the whole meeting was put quickly to rest. I guess the, trustees were not here, are the popular ones, noisy ones, and so anyways, we're very efficient, and that's great, and it's not even 2 o'clock yet.
That's carried. So we are back into open session, and yes, you want to invite those who we asked to leave. They're more than welcome to come back. We can get our students back online, I guess, too, and good to go. Everyone should be. Oh, good.
Yeah.
Excellent.
I was supposed to know. Thank you.
Just wait to see if anybody else needs to come back in. Hey, Bill, come on in. We're just waiting to kind of get people back on track here and visitors in, Bill.
I'm gonna try.
Yep. Snuck in the other door.
Right behind you.
Oh,
Yes, super.
We'll just let Bill get set up for a minute.
Oh, laptop. What is it?
Are we good to go, Hannah, do you think?
Yeah, as soon as I can get his presentation done.
Okay,
I'm sorry, it's just, takes a long time. There we go.
okay, that's perfect.
There we go.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
So we have 2 agenda items in our open session for Finance and Resources Committee, and the first one is around Summer Capital Projects Report, which I know we're all interested in hearing about. And I'll turn it over to Superintendent Barnes to introduce that piece.
Thank you. Thank you. Thanks, Susan. And I did want to not just introduce Mr. Bill Murray, the manager of facilities, but to say a great big thank you to you and your team. Probably 100 and so custodians and trades folks, not to mention the 2 project managers who look after all of those outside contractors that accomplish the work around the year, but especially in the summer. And if you've been, I mean, every time we go into the school at the beginning of the year, everything is so polished and shiny, and I'm not sure how they pull it off because they actually do work before they do the cleaning. So I wanted to say thank you and acknowledge the work that you do. And I'm looking forward to seeing what you showcase.
Me too. This may have been developed over the past hour or so, so I apologize for the
It's very current, obviously,
lack of polish on it.
not to worry.
Thank you. So I think one of the biggest projects we have underway right now is the Herman Childcare Edition. It is 98% complete. The work that's left to do is very minimal. It's things like cubbies and door hardware. We can see here that the light brick, that's all new build with the new doors in between the existing Herman Street School and new childcare facility. That's a shared hallway. So this would be a space where people can walk right through, turn right into the childcare, or turn left to enter Herman Street School. This is one of the program spaces. This is a toddler room, I think, looking towards the back of the property. The fencing's in, the sod is in. Yeah, we are really, really close to completion. Some of the themes that I keep on talking about in our own construction projects, we've carried them through here with flooring that doesn't require wax and chemicals to maintain. So that's reducing our environmental impact. We, as much as possible, we're using natural wood finishes and light woods and maples and beeches, because I really like them. And they do look good, and they make you, and I've got a classroom picture later, but it's, you know, the response that we had from the teacher who was collaborated with us in the design of the classroom and the principal, they feel like nice spaces. So we'll keep doing that. The capping on that half wall with a thick piece of wood, it's natural elements are good for thinking. We've done, every year I talk about all the LED lighting. We're continuing that. We've done This is the gym at Central.
Oh,
You look
that's great.
closely, you can see that we've reduced the number of fixtures, which were fluorescent fixtures, which are, not terribly energy efficient. These are LED lights and fewer lights. So the energy consumption in a big space where the lights are on for a long time, will, it'll drop by 75%. And as energy prices increase, that becomes more and more relevant because we need to protect those operating dollars. So this is the Cobden classroom, and it was, it was a close collaboration between the teacher and ECE in the class and our facility staff. So again, you can see light woods in that cubby area, along in the little sink area. So it's a nice refresh for a 50-year-old classroom, I think. And here again, it's light wood. That storage, the amount of storage in this classroom is incredible, and it's out of the, you don't have bins stuck all over the place. It can be up and out of the way, and so that preserves classroom space for activities. So it's not all sunshine and roses. At Beachburg, we have a partnership with the municipality where they're redeveloping Cameron Street with new sewer and water and sidewalks and paving. We had hoped that this would be complete by or very close to complete by the start of school, and it's not. This was just last night. This is as good as I've seen it in 2 months. 2 weeks ago, I honestly don't think you could have gotten a bus or an ambulance through that road. It was, 10 inches of slop and mud. But there, it is progressing. It will be done. And when we're done, the good part for us is we'll have a redesigned parking lot, which will allow students to discharge beside the school safely off of the road. And hopefully reduce any chance of vehicle student interaction. And this is looking down Cameron Street towards Beachburg Road, and it's, this is much better. It's not good yet. Kind of while continuing ed, this was a project that came up near the end of the school year. Probably familiar with that, where we're taking underutilized space and using it for continuing ed. This is the nicer of the two classrooms at this point. There's still some unpacking to do because the move came very, very late in the summer, but the site is up and running. And again, it's those recurring themes of light wood and trying to use making sure that we have a space that works for the user. And so in this case, there's 2 office spaces in the classroom that's not shown here, as well as an accessible washroom and the little kitchenette. So it's a pretty functional space for 2 classrooms. One was used for PPE storage for the last couple of years, and one was, I think it was a remote learning classroom, or the French teacher was in there part-time too. So, and there's still spare classrooms at Pineview, so it's not that they're being squeezed at this point. And there's the kitchenette. This is the Armpart Library, and I'm hopeful that we will get some new furniture in there. But the piece that I'm highlighting is the vinyl plank flooring. So again, it's a no wax floor, natural tones in wood. This is we've done this at a number of libraries, including Eganville and Champlain. I would love to do this on the 3rd floor at Mary Street, where the floor is in terrible shape. We'll have to talk about that later. Yeah, here's the library at Eganville. Accessibility at some point, possibly this fall, or worst case next summer, the front door at Armpart High School will be accessible. We're putting in a ramp. We were able to get the the stair lift done over the summer. So we're happy about that. So that won't disturb students as we're doing the work at the front. But, you know, the thing I like here is that anyone will be able to enter Renfrew High School through the front door versus the existing accessible entrance, which is 400 feet down the side of the building. You have to, you know, go in, down a ramp, up a stair lift just to get to the office. So it's, you know, having a front door accessible is a statement, and it's the kind of statement that we promote. The pluses are there because we, as a reminder to me, we replaced an elevator and updated two others at Fellows, Beachburg, and Walter Zado. Beachburg and Walter Zado, because there's a TSSA inspector's strike, and so TSSA inspects all elevators and lifting devices in schools and hospitals and buildings. So we had to wait a little while to get our inspections done, but all three lifts are up and running now, which is good. Lots of outside work on the left. That's a staff entrance at Fellows, which has been crumbling, and it's new now, and we don't have to worry about slips or anyone stepping into a big crack in that. So that's great. At Mackenzie, the rear stairs were falling apart as well, and they were whole for a while. So that's been done. Killaloe, we did some upgrades on some concrete work. Other things that we, you know, again, last year we spent over the summer, we spent $1 million on roofing, and later this fall, I will be coming back to you with that number again. It's roofing is probably always our biggest exposure, and it's up about 20% in the last 2 years, which I think is consistent with everything else. But when you're talking about 20% on $1 million or on $1.2 million, it becomes a really big number. And it speaks to the importance of trying to install the best quality roofs so we get value. We can put up cheaper roofs, but you know, and this fall is the year I'm going to come back to you, talked about Valor in our newest school and having to do a resurfacing on a piece of roof because it was cheap at the time of construction. So that's a quick overview. On the classroom piece, that's one of the pieces that makes staff feel good. It's a good learning environment for students. We only do 5 or 6 classrooms a year. We need to do more, and I haven't figured out how we do the maintenance work, which is important to try and keep up our buildings, but also to refresh these classrooms. We have a lot of classrooms that honestly are 40 and 50 years old. And, you know, it's millwork is, you know, you generally hope for 20 years out of it, 20 years out of a floor. We're double that in probably 50% of our classrooms. So that will be a challenge. I would love to do 10 or 15 classrooms. And when we're talking about, say, 400 classrooms that need attention, you know, I can't think in terms of 40-year plans. We need to figure out how to accelerate that. And the last thing I'm going to say about that is we get huge bang for our buck by having our carpenters build those classrooms at a third of the cost of what it will cost to have a contractor come in and do it. So yeah, we'll have to figure that out and how we try and keep things up as in as good a condition as possible, but make sure that we're revamping spaces so everyone gets the benefit. And that's the problem when you go into a classroom in a school and you say at Walter Zado, where we did a couple classrooms, they turned out beautifully, and then everyone wants a classroom done. And they should want that. Anyway, that's enough for me.
Okay, thanks very much, Bill. Questions, comments? Mike?
I was pleased to hear that it's a third of the cost doing it in-house. think that's really the only realistic feasible way it can be done in the future. I mean, it's just nice to hear that. And lastly, I know we're all for accessibility, but stair lift at ADHS, I really don't know the building, but it sounds like it's well overdue. But do we get any special funding for those projects? That's just sort of you squirrel away a little, eventually you get enough to do something like this?
It just comes out of the facilities renewal, and school improvement funding. There's a lot of talk about accessibility and the need to bring those buildings up, supposedly by 2025, but there's no dedicated funding for it. It comes out of those two envelopes.
Okay, appreciate it. Thank you.
Any other questions? Did you have your hand up, Jackie?
I
Jacqueline?
was just wiping my eye.
Oh, sorry, but if you had a
It
question,
wasn't a tear or anything. But
I've shed a few too.
yeah, but it looks really good, though, Bill, what you showed for sure. Looks fantastic. And during the year, they did a nice little washroom at Champlain for kinders.
Yes.
That looks nice Also, I know it seems like a little thing, but it was important for the kids to feel respected and the staff and. It's good.
And I didn't touch on painting either.
Oh,
And I'm pleased, if you're gonna, hopefully you'll be in the buildings this fall and take a look, because we've touched just about every building at some point. And we continue to roll through doing the more public spaces, but now more and more in classrooms painting as we can get into them. And if we're able to put down a floor, paint, and LED lighting in that classroom, it just jumps out. It's a new room in a building that probably has another 30 or 40 years left of it.
Marjorie, I'll let you go ahead.
Bill, I'm really sorry to hear that you don't want to do a 40-year plan for us. Because I was hoping that we might keep you with some rejuvenation for another 40 years. Because I know, having known you a long time and seeing all these projects you do, that you really care about it. And that makes me feel warm. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I can't, it's not an option that, but thank you. Something to shoot for.
Mike, did you have another?
Yes, just one last thing, just thinking outside the box a little bit, and that is with somebody like Alex Harris, yourself, and whoever else through the colleges. I'm just wondering if there's some way we could get college student involvement sometime down the road with supervision from some of our registered carpenters to maybe take a classroom here and a classroom there, especially the ones that are closer to Algonquin, to just sort of, if anybody can make it work, it's someone like you and Alex and through the college, just tossing that out there, because you're right. And we're not going to have you around for 40 years, maybe only 30, but that's okay. Anyway, those are my comments. Thank you. You've seen the show back when we were kids, A $6 Million Man. I mean, you can just get parts today, right?
Right.
Anyway, thank you.
I don't.
Yeah, go ahead.
Kristen?
Kristen, did you have a comment?
I just wondered which schools have the LED lighting? I'm only asking for something to discuss.
75% of them at this point.
Oh, they do, okay.
We're getting close. Over the next 3 years, they'll all be done.
And just the entrance to Armprior, a couple of us were there last week, and certainly a lot of students who need accommodations and support. So just the ease of that. Yeah, it looked really good.
It sounds like you had a very busy summer.
Stuff going on.
As always, right? Thank you very much, Bill. Appreciate that update, and you're exactly right. It makes such a difference it's just like at home, right? You put a new coat of paint and a new floor down and you feel like you're in a new place. So it's lovely for our students and our staff. So thank you so much to you and your staff for all you do for us. That's for sure.
It's always me standing here, but it's our trades and our project managers and our contractors who really make the difference. And for the most part, we work with good contractors and we try and develop those relationships so they stick with us. Because when you have that trust in the people you're working with, you can get a lot more done if you're working and not fighting about change orders and stuff like that.
Absolutely. And even more challenging these days when contractors are all super busy and have lots of other places they could be. So
Yep.
those relationships you've developed over the years are paying off in big,
Yeah,
big,
I hope
big
so.
time for us. So thank you for that very much.
Thank you.
Good. Carry on.
Okay, thank you.
Bill, don't run away.
Brian.
We always enjoy your presentations. You're a master at this. You're always on top of your file. And it's one part of the board that's always interesting. So I have a little note of appreciation for you. I'm sure you must have a real stack of inspection.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. You have no idea how uncomfortable I am speaking.
We did a great job. So
Take care.
thanks, Bill.
Okay. Second item on our agenda today is the annual action plan for strategic
Communications and community public relations. And I know we're all looking forward to hearing what's in store for our communications team and for our new staff person we hope to hire pretty soon that will also help to fill up that area. So I'll turn it over to you, Pino, to lead us in that, please.
Terrific. Thank you, Madam Chair. Just to provide in this report an update to the Board of Trustees with an overview of system-wide action plan for strategic communications and community public relations for the current school year. Just a couple of quick points to start. One, as Susan mentioned, we are looking forward to hiring our Executive Officer of Public Relations, and we did discuss at length. I want to thank Hannah for her leadership in much of this work, and I'll turn it over to her shortly. We did talk about whether we would defer this action plan until we had the executive officer in place, or get going on elements of this action plan and allow that new person coming in some time to adapt to the plan of action as it is in place, modify and adapt it as required, and then really come in next school year with their own version of that plan. And we went with the latter because we thought it was important to do some of the things that Hannah's going to speak to you about with her and Ray this school year. So we thought we'd get this underway because we knew we had to do some of these things and they're important. So I did want to give that caveat and to share with the Board of Trustees. We're looking at interviews for that position this week and looking to firm up that position. Hopefully, if all goes well in the next couple of weeks, if it goes smoothly, and if not, we'll relook it. But that's our intent. As noted through the strategic plan of 2021 to 2025, a significant emphasis is placed on engaging parents and guardians and community members, as well as staff and students in meaningful dialogue regarding programs and services offered by the district, including aspects of its first strategic priority, inspire community engagement and partnerships. The annual action plan for the current school year builds upon the strategic communications plan that was shared at the board meeting of February 22nd, 2022. The objectives of the plan ensure an integrated, responsive approach to how and when, where and why the organization reaches out to its stakeholders to share information or gather input or feedback on communications to date. The proposed plan, and I'll just start the attachment and then again turn it over to Hannah, really has a number of components. The first two are to ensure really a sense of belonging among stakeholders of the organization, and then to optimize the talents and resources that we have to offer to our communities. There are two growth targets established, one related to market share, the other regarding impact and or feedback on progress over time. And then there's 4 key areas of the annual action plan. With respect to the plan itself, you'll see in the attachment, the first growth target is to increase the overall market share of the organization in the county by 1.5% as measured by our enrollment reports to the Ministry of Education. And that's part of a slow and steady assurance really over time that we're sensibly sized as an organization, that we have enrollment that matches our properties and our staffing, that we don't have too many empty spaces relative to the number of students we have, or the other way around, that we haven't got schools where we have way more students than the spaces we can afford. And so part of that percentage growth over time and to ensure our market share stays healthy and established, coexisting with all of our other community partners in the education sector. The Catholic Board that we just spoke about in closed item, but also the other districts or private affiliations. And that's part of that sensible sizing that we're looking to do. The second one is to provide stakeholders, internal and external to the organization, with the opportunity to give input or feedback, as mentioned, on aspects of strategic communications through either a public survey and or focus group sessions. And often when we do one of those survey of our stakeholders, it leads us to some specific focus group follow-up pieces. So those are the two growth areas of targets. It's important to highlight as well, beyond the 4 areas that Hannah will talk to about you momentarily, that communication staff will follow up with stakeholders of the organization to debrief significant communications intensive activities or events and debrief past practices such as communications related to the global pandemic. And that's in heavy partnership with our local public health unit. School-based threats, another great example where we had communications intensive involvement with schools, and that's also in partnership with the Ontario Provincial Police. As just 2 instances, those debrief sessions will assist in future day-to-day communications for schools and central departments moving forward. So here, although it may not be specific in the current plan, we do know that every time we experience something that requires communication, we learn from it. There's elements of timing, elements of messaging, the amount of messaging that we always learn from. So we want to take the opportunity when we're not in that kind of a high intensity situation to debrief it, learn from it, hear from our stakeholders, and shape the next iteration of whatever we put forward. And again, also note the plan of action established will be reviewed by the appointed Executive Officer of Public Relations for additional adaptations during the course of the school year. So with that, I'll turn it over to Hannah. I'll take you through some of the details of those elements.
Yeah, thanks, Pino. So thanks, everyone. I'm very pleased to be here today to provide an update on comms that has nothing to do really with COVID. And I know our staff are going to be so happy to hear from me this year when it's not related to COVID. So really, I want to focus on, we have kind of 3 main projects that are taking place. One, which is more of a new project, and then 2, which are ongoing that have been paused and delayed multiple times because of the pandemic. And then, of course, the million other day-to-day stuff that Ray and I are working on continuously. So the first thing that I wanted to mention is our video segment series. So we're very fortunate that we, over the next 2 school years really, have been able to partner with Matt LeMay, who, those of you who maybe don't know Matt, he is a local Métis guy from Pembroke, and he runs his own film, his videographer company, Indigenous Geographic it's called. And Matt actually sits on our Indigenous Advisory Committee as well, and is a big leader in public education within Renfrew County. So I'm very pleased that I was able to kind of saddle him into this last year. And since then, he is doing some pretty big work. So I'm happy that we got him when we did. You know, he also went to the Vatican with various members of the First Nations, Inuit, and Métis community this past year. And is doing a lot of work for CBC right now as well. So I feel very grateful that we managed to get him at the price we did and for the time we did before he kind of blew up in the last year. Him and Crystal Martin have their new company. So we're very pleased to be working with him this year. And we identified sort of 9 key areas that we will be focusing video segments on this year. The video segments will be predominantly for our social media and will be 3 to 5 minutes in length. So we're kind of in the initial planning stages of those. We will be starting, you'll see them on your list there, but kind of the 3 we'll be starting with this fall is our TELTC group. They will be one of the first ones out of the gate, and that's our technology enabled learning team. We'll be following, or will be at kind of simultaneously, I guess, as well with our French as a second language program expansion. So we'll be doing both the elementary and the secondary, but it will be more highlighting what we've already done at the elementary phase and what we plan on doing for that secondary. And then we'll be moving right into Indigenous education. So we're really hoping to get those 3 videos kind of right at the gate, in the next few months. And then we'll be moving on to the other focus areas. So we have adult and continuing education, which would be a focus on all of our sites. Athletics and extracurricular activities, our ESL program, which will probably be pulled into the adult and continuing education video. They'll probably be the same one. Equity, inclusion, anti-oppression, anti-racism, expanding a little bit for parents and guardians and our community members about what, it's a fairly new role to our system. So what that means in our schools. international education, of course, and the expansion that we have going there. Special education, our OYAP, Shazam, and skilled trades individuals, will be working a lot with them, and then our wellness and mental health services. So we're really looking forward to getting underway. These videos, like I said, they will predominantly be 3 to 5 minutes in length. And we'll be really focusing more on the school staff. You know, our hope is to really focus on the individuals who are in the classrooms every day, who students are going to recognize, who parents are going to recognize, who are doing that work, along with, of course, our students in our classrooms. So we're really looking forward to getting those. We have our first meeting, I think, scheduled next week for one of those. So really looking forward to getting those. I think those are going to be one of our biggest bang for our buck campaigns this year, if you will, in advertising the district and the programs and services that we offer here at the Renfrew County District School Board. And just to make a note there on the price, I guess, or the projected cost, that is just a very baseline projection. This will, of course, all depend on the final length of the videos and all that sort of thing. So we were able to get a general quote from Matt, but very dependent, of course, on what the final product for those ends up being, which we, of course, will be able to drive what we want to see for those. And worth noting as well, in terms of the leads for those, so the video segments will be predominantly led by myself. Ray, of course, will be assisting here and there, but he's he's leading a few other big projects as well. So that will predominantly be led by myself and with assistance, of course, by our senior team and our system leads across the district. Yeah. So the next big project, and that is more of our newer project. This project is a project that has been delayed at least for a year over the course of the pandemic, and that's the follow-up for the redevelopment of our website. So this is our 28 school sites, including our continuing education site. Ray will be taking a big technology lead on this, and I will be doing more of the coordination lead for this project. But Ray and I will be pretty much solely doing this project with the assistance of whoever we get. So that's kind of where the phase we're at right now. We have met with our 3 providers. We actually met with them last year as well, but did require some updated information from them this year, as it's been a whole year since we did that initial proposal, or that RFP, I guess. So Ray and I have met with 3 different providers. We hope to have a decision, but we meet with Doug Feebig. Doug really works with us more at arm's length for this. The IT staff is not really too heavily involved in the website maintenance or even the creation of it. It's pretty much solely with comms. But of course, Ray and I want to make sure that any company that we choose is going to be a good fit. And if Doug or his team have any, reasons that they think it would not be a good fit for us. We have, like I said, we have 3 providers. We hope to make that decision in the next 2 weeks. And then once we do that, we're kind of up and running. So we'll be working with those providers to start the development of those 27 school sites. So while it is a large project in terms of the number of sites, this will really be not as large of a project as the one we will be undertaking next year, which is the redevelopment of our intranet site. So that is the site that we currently use just for internal staff only, to be able to access resources, anything from health and safety information, human resources information. And we'll be taking, as Doug kind of touched on a little bit as well, we'll be taking an in-depth look as to how are resources better and best shared for staff in the district as well while we do that. So this is really a 2-year process between this phase 2 and phase 3, and will be very time consuming for sure. We're really looking forward to getting those school sites up and running. Our hope is, depending on the vendor, but we really hope to have them up for next September. And in fact, we think we'll be able to get them up sooner than that. So we're really pleased with that. And all of our vendors, or all of our providers who we've interviewed for this particular contract have also agreed that that is a reasonable timeline, for that. So we're really pleased with that. And I just want to mention as well, when we look at the budget, those were just budgeted projected costs based on what we currently had with eSolutions. So those costs may vary depending on the provider that we choose to go with, and also you know, the little add-ons and stuff that we maybe choose to take on as part of that. So for a good example is School Messenger. You know, we currently use School Messenger to communicate via text, email, and phone calls to parents and guardians through school. You know, if we went on with a new provider, or if we choose to go on with School Messenger, you know, would we have to switch that? Is that an extra fee or an extra thing that would be worthwhile us having on as part of that? Just like our emergency response that we would be able to add on to all of those sites, and also all of, you know, with parents and guardians communication as well. So a little bit, that's really just a rough number. And at our next, whenever we present kind of an update for you in the near future, we'll have more actual numbers on that, because we will have selected our vendor by that point as well. And then the third project, which was an ongoing project that had been started back in the spring of 2017, I believe, is of course our digital signs. So this is it's phase 2 and phase 3. So I apologize, the updated of the schools that have been completed through the phases that was provided in the handout is not correct. So I'll just go through that a little bit to update you on that. So the phase 1 was done, and that one is complete, but phase 2, what we're really looking at, Walter's Auto. So we did have a little bit of, I should also say on the website side, Ray will be leading a big majority of that. Ray has over 17 years of website redevelopment skills and experience that already has proven extremely beneficial for us internally here for our organization. So Ray will be leading a lot of those tech-based, you know, upgrades and as we move through that process for the websites. When we move over here, it will be myself and Bill Murray who will predominantly be executing the digital signage. So just to give you a bit of an idea, phase 2 was interrupted both through the pandemic, but was also interrupted for some zoning issues that we had at some of our schools. So the reason that is that some of our digital signs are going to have to be placed on municipal property. So we do have to coordinate that with some of our municipalities. So just to give you an idea, ADHS was interrupted by that. They're currently the only secondary school that we have that does not have a digital sign. They will be priority in this phase 3 or phase 2, however you want to look at it, as phase 2 and phase 3 are kind of one phase now. And then for our elementary, so we have 8 sites that are currently done, but we still have 12 sites to complete for our elementary. So that's AJ Charbonneau, Admaston, Beachburg, Central, Cobden, Eganville, Hiveview, Killaloe, McNabb, Palmer Rapids, Sherwood, and Walter's Auto. So those are the remainder of our elementary schools that are yet to be done. And, you know, again, we will be looking at screens and sizes and all those things that are still going to be in fitting with what we want to see district wide, but will be different, but yet the same from school to school. So we will be coordinating with our vendor on that. So Bill and I have our first meeting on this in the next 2 weeks, I believe. But something that they have already, we need to figure out, first of all, if we have to go back out to tender for this, if we're required to request an RFP. Even if we choose to go with this provider, we may still be required to look into that, which will add some time. We've also already been warned that, you know, these digital screens are very, as you know, they're big pieces of technology, with many of the pieces of these technology that are significantly delayed in being able to obtain. So we don't see this as being necessarily a quick or an easy process for some of these, especially, you know, our provider and us, we can work as quickly as we can, but you know, if we're waiting 6 to 8 months for a piece of equipment for our digital screens, and you know, these are quite specialized pieces of equipment as well. As you know, they're outside in the -40 temperatures, they're outside in the +40 temperatures, and they're outside in all weather conditions. So we, you know, I think we will have a few hurdles as we look at this particular project, but we're really hoping to wrap this up in the next 2 years. It's been delayed both because of COVID and some other issues, but we're really looking forward to getting that finalized so that all of our schools, with the exception of Whitney, has that digital signage presence. And it serves us not just as a district to have, you know, those fun things that, you know, our students like to put up, you know, their coding initiatives and all that kind of stuff. But it also, you know, for emergency response and all of those things that we're kind of moving towards a little bit more concrete here through various procedures, it is really a necessity at a lot of our buildings, especially our high traffic buildings. You know, we look at ADHS that, you know, that they don't have one yet in that particular area. So we'll be revisiting that, and that's going to be, I would say, one of our larger projects out of the 3. And then, of course, the day-to-day school operations, which is ongoing. And just to give you a little bit of idea, while these three projects would be, really a full-time job in themselves for Ray and I, we're also dealing with anywhere from 20 or 10 to 20 plus individual pieces of work that we're doing with schools and departments at any given time. So that's everything from, of course, our director's annual report and all those things. But working with schools on training on websites, website updates, there's always new content that needs to be created for various departments and schools depending on their activities. So, it's worth mentioning that is also a huge part of the role in comms, and takes up a significant amount of time as well. So there's just two points I want to highlight on here when we look at the day-to-day work of comms that is mentioned in your report. And that's the rejuvenation of the fundraising initiatives for the organization, including the Student Support Fund. That, just to highlight for you, that's not coordinated through Ray and myself as the comms team. That's more coordinated through Mary McCaw, but just falls under this report because of the new executive officer position. And that's the same with the management and modernizing of the records for the district. Of course, comms will play an instrumental role as we roll that out, but that's kind of falling under there more because it falls under the executive officer position. So Ray and I have more of an arm's length at those particular bullets. And then last but not least, and Doug mentioned this as well, as Pino did in his introduction, is the comms emergency and critical incident response plan. So this has been something that's been in the works for us for a while now, but has never been finalized for many reasons. But certainly through the pandemic and even last year when we looked at the incidents that were taking place at RCI, we really feel it's important to get a response plan in place that is more predominantly, of course, our schools all have their APs and their policies, and they know what they need to do when they're, faced with those situations, our school staff. But it's more, how does comms play into this so that we are working with the OPP, we're working with our superintendents, and we're working with communicating to our school communities. So that's going to be a big project as well that predominantly myself will be undertaking. And I'm really looking forward. This October, we're back to meeting as a case group, which I'm really excited about. We haven't met as a team since 2019. So this conference will be, one of the big focuses of this conference will be emergency and critical incident reporting through comms. So I'm really eager and anxious to get some further information from my colleagues across the country about what they're doing. And I've been very fortunate that some of our colleagues across the province have sent me their own school board's critical emergency response plan for communications. So I'll be kind of looking at those with a fine-tooth comb over the next few months so that we have one in place here for our system. So I think that's it. Happy to take any questions if anyone has any questions or comments.
Okay, thanks, Hannah. Have we got any questions, comments? Michael?
I'll start off with a bit of humor. I'm going to turn it to Brian Morris for a moment. This is a bit of history. Matt LeMay, for those of you who don't know, is a graduate of our board.
Yes, he
Graduate
is.
of Fellows High School. I've known Matt since he was quite young. We live on the same street. He could have chosen to leave the valley, but I think it's in his blood.
Yep.
Great choosing to raise his family here. I think we're very fortunate to be able to utilize his skills. I was fortunate enough to work with his father as an administrator many years ago. Probably S.O. Correa would remember Mike LeMay, who just soon to step down as mayor. He's not going out as mayor. He's going out as mayor. He's chosen not to run again, so he's had 2 terms. So I feel like I'm Brian Morris stepping into this conversation because he sometimes gives us history lessons. So for those of you in the room that don't know, that's my quick history lesson.
Yeah, we feel very fortunate to have Mike for sure. Matt, sorry. And his children are still both in our system.
Yes.
Yeah.
Anyway,
I'm glad he's also quite the musician.
yes.
I know he was in competition with Josh Hopkins, who's now an opera star worldwide.
I think that's another Matt LeMay. Because there's 2 of them.
Yes, that's the
Yeah.
other.
Yeah, that's the other one. But that's a common error because people think people just think I'm this multi-talented person. But
Thank you for listening.
Okay, Marjorie, do you have a question?
Yeah,
or
thank you.
comment?
This is my language when everything is laid out and I can understand it
yeah,
very
good.
much. It's very clear to me what you plan to do in the next couple of years.
Yeah.
In reading the list of these videos that you're going to make, however, I'm sort of thinking of our discussions about secondary school review and how at this table we have talked about how people deciding on which secondary school in which board to send their high school students, there's often a discussion about the traditional academics of that word these days, traditional subjects that may lead to university entrance, right? I don't see that reflected in this list. And I think because we have felt that this may be something that people are looking for. They want to be sure their kids are going to get physics and calculus and music and those kinds of things. That doesn't need to be a separate video, but I would hope that there would be some emphasis on working that into the videos to reassure people that we strive for the highest standards in the university traditional subjects. I was looking at the list and I thought, for example, that could very well be worked into special education.
That's correct, yeah.
Because we have very few programs for the gifted, and we have gifted children and we need to provide for them. It could be worked into FSL with the DELF and those kinds of things. So you probably already have that on your list. And the other one is an extracurricular. There has been a tendency, because it's so photographable and reportable, to focus on sports and which team did what, and the pictures and the newspapers are always of the sports teams and stuff. I would have liked to see an extracurricular, at least equivalent emphasis on extracurriculars which lead to knowledge and skill other than and attitudes other than the sport. I'm not denigrating sports. I've been a coach for many years myself, but we also need to put an emphasis on the high standards we hold for traditional subjects and for gifted and students who aspire to university. And we need to have that. It could be a separate video, but it would be nice also to work it into a number. I just picked three that quickly looking at them that I thought, well, this would provide an opportunity if your video is how many minutes?
Well, 3 to 5. But that's certainly going to be the underlining theme through all of those videos, Marjorie, both for elementary and for secondary. We really don't want to focus one. I mean, obviously our FSL one, for example, while we're going to be highlighting what we've done at elementary, it's really going to be focusing on the secondary because that's what we're kind of right in the middle of, right? Our Indigenous Ed is another great one. Let's highlight the programs that are offered for both our Indigenous and our non-Indigenous
Right,
students.
coaches, all that,
Yes,
right.
exactly. So that is the common theme at both the elementary and secondary level through all of those videos, because the reality is we just can't go into that nitty gritty about programs offering in every video.
Understand that.
So it's really trying to highlight on that broader scale to kind of get that interest so that they then can follow up to see what might be a good fit for them at RCI or fellows or kindergarten registration.
Yeah. I wasn't meaning to suggest that you should lay out the grade 12 physics curriculum. But
We might lose a few people.
on the other hand, things were happening in this video. There could be a quick reference with grade 12 in physics or
Absolutely, yeah.
something like that, whatever.
Yeah.
Did you want to
Oh,
follow
I'll
up?
shut up.
Yeah, please through Madam Chair, just I think Trustee Allen raises a good point. When it comes to the secondary school review, which intersects with many of these, beyond what Hannah's talking about in a 3 to 5 minute video, and 3 to 5 minutes can go really quickly. So paring it down and what the focus of it's important. We'll look at coming out of the secondary school review, like we did at elementary too. What are those products that come of it? At the elementary level, we had a 20-page document that laid out expansion across families of schools over the next 5 to 10 years with a video that spoke to some of the new program innovations that we're putting in place. We'll look at that at secondary level, which will balance all of our program pathways. It'll go back to those topics and themes to make sure we cover all of those pieces in the right balance for us as an organization. So separate from these, as part of the secondary school review, we should, I think, as an organization coming at the vision exercise, explain to our public what it is that we're putting forward, that we've done well in the past and that we're doing into the future. So beyond this, we'll have that other element which will intersect with this, but may not be the flavor of each of these. The Indigenous one may not speak solely to secondary. It'll speak to all that we're doing in terms of Indigenous ways of knowing and learning and living. So just wanted to put that in that at the secondary school review part, we'll do something that showcases what we ultimately decide upon there across all of our programs.
Yeah, it's one of the big things that we receive, feedback on a lot from our staff, especially is that we have so many staff and so many programs doing great things in our district, and we just can't and we don't highlight them all to their full potential, right? So the hope of these videos, I look at our TELC group as a prime example. They're really leaders in the province in a lot of the work that they do, and I can guarantee you, if you ask the majority of parents or guardians on the street, they would have no idea what that particular role is in our district, right? So, you can almost think of these as mini advertisements, as if you will, for our board, and, highlighting hopefully for parents and, even looking at our anti-racism, Indigenous ed, adults in continuing education is another big one, highlighting for people that these programs exist, and, giving them a little bit more knowledge, that they probably already don't have. Yep.
Brian, you got a comment, question?
Marjorie hit the nail right on the head. We've been talking, basically developing this idea quite a bit when we were, last June, we passed, our, proposal in order to develop a way of looking at our program structure for STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math. And that's a very sizable group of our population, but we're focused on the other areas, the other pathways, for success for our students, and rightfully so. Yeah, but somehow the senior academic courses where you have your academically oriented students, those students are doing fine. We're not going to really highlight those. This is one area that just jumped out at me as missing from this. And it's not specifically focusing on one program. We have a number of academic programs that are absolutely excellent. We had a presentation by video, actually, not too long ago, from Peter Cudmore down in Marlborough High School, and it was robotics and science-based. Something like that could be part of here's an example of the kinds of things that we're doing, to help our kids who are oriented in this way to get into specialized programs in university, or become the next doctor, or become the next whatever. So that's one area I really would like to see added to there. Again, it's not focusing on one specific little program. It could be looking at the entire mix of programs at the senior academic level.
Yeah, and it's a good point, Chair Morris, and I think that you'll see that in those videos. I'm looking at TELC as a prime example. A lot of what you mentioned will be, included in those. So really, these are kind of overarching themes for all of those topics for kids, all the way from trades and workplace, all the way up to those academic programs. I mean, that's what we're really hoping to accomplish with those.
That's fine, but we're also putting an emphasis on academic excellence in our strategic plan. And
Yes.
coming out of that is the STEM proposal. So that's an area entire of itself, in
Definitely.
my mind.
So lots of food for thought, right?
Yes. Yeah, definitely.
I have a couple of quick questions,
Yeah.
but I did want to ask Ava or Taylor if either one of them had any comments or questions. My apologies for not asking that
When you don't see them.
there. But I wasn't sure if you had a comment or a question around the communications plan in particular. Ava or Taylor?
Yeah, I think it's a really good idea overall, as long as we highlight like every different area so that everyone who's watching it can relate to the videos. I think it would be super amazing. Like, it's a great idea.
Thanks, Ava. Anything to add, Taylor?
Taylor may not be there.
Okay.
She was
And
on the
that's
bus, I know, not that long ago.
Okay.
No. Hi, sorry, I'm here. I'm here. I was having a hard time, like actually unmuting my mic. I agree with Ava. I think it's a good idea. I think it seems like you put a lot of thought into it. So I think execution, it's going to be great.
Good, thank you.
Taylor.
Thanks for that input. It's too bad you didn't have like 4 more staff, right? Because
Yes.
it sounds like.
And more money.
It's really full. It's really full. I have just a couple of quick,
Yeah.
very quite specific questions.
Mhm.
When I look at the growth target 1 and number 2, I guess one of the questions I had around the growth target 1, and I don't know, Hannah or Pino, if you went into this one, we talk about potentially increasing our market share by 1.5%. Is there a time frame in there that we're going to measure that against? I mean, normally we add a timepiece to the evaluation or review of that kind of a metric as well.
Yeah, the 1.5%, there's always a danger when you become quantitative by identifying a number. And there's always a danger when you don't,
That's right.
right? When you don't identify a target, then you can talk a great game and nothing changes. And so what I'm pushing myself to do and pushing staff to do is to commit to a balance of a quantitative and qualitative growth target approach, a little bit of both. And that's where one of these talks numbers and the other one talks a little more feedback to help move some of the areas. That 1.5% is sort of mapped over the next, really in year 2 of a 4-year plan. And if we had a growth target of 1.5% on balance overall, elementary and secondary over the next 4 years to match what was about 0.4% this past year, we had an increase of 2.5% at elementary and a minus 2.1% at secondary. But in essence, if we can get to this on balance, we put ourselves in a position market share to coexist with all of our other coterminous partners. No intention on my part to put anybody else out of business. What I'm saying is if we can get to that and we do that over the next 4-year period, so you're likely to see the same number next year unless we don't meet that target and have to adjust. But if we were able to do this, we would be able to approach the kind of market share for our organization that would be 2/3 of the county, which would put us, when any moratorium is eventually lifted, because a moratorium from the provincial government wouldn't be lifted without a series of formula factors for staffing. And so we look at this percentage over the next 4-year period, 1.5% every year, knowing that at some point there'll be a lift on a moratorium, which will leave the organization in a place where we're not facing drastic decisions right there and then, where the funding we get doesn't match the pupil spaces we have in our buildings. And now we've got to make decisions that are in essence out of our control. So we're doing these kinds of things to grow at 1.5% over the next 4 years, gets us back to a 2/3 market share in the county, equates to about 10,000 students, and puts us in a place where if that lift on the moratorium ever came off, we wouldn't be forced instantly into difficult decisions that everyone wants to avoid. There is a school of thought that says, why that percentage and why now? Why not just keep going the way we're going? And it's precisely for that reason that we've got to sensibly size ourselves as an organization. You can do that in many ways. You can start closing schools that brings your sensible size down. You can increase enrollment that brings your sensible size up. We're looking at that piece right now while the moratorium is in place to try and move that. So that's the reason for that, with a goal of 5 digits of students and 2/3 of the market share in the county, which again, doesn't, when I look at the other numbers from all of our partners, doesn't significantly impact their organizations and allows us to exist. One of the things I can't stomach, being honest with the Board of Trustees, is that other organizations would expand schools and we would be closed. That doesn't make sense to me. That we would have to shut down and other schools would be getting grant funding to build schools. Because actually in Renfrew County, there's plenty of space everywhere right now. So that's part of that focus here. Want to be upfront with everyone about what the targets are and want to be clear in the public board that no intention here to put anybody out of business. Intention here to ensure we're sensibly sized and we're making the right decisions to get to that as an organization for decisions, quite frankly, long after my time.
Yeah, that's helpful. Thank you for that. And the second one, the opportunity for input, public survey or focus group sessions. Is there a time frame on that as well? Like, are we doing that this year, next year?
Yeah.
Every year?
I'll let Director.
Yeah, I did jump in here, Hannah. We talked a bit about this and there's a danger with surveys here too.
Yes, absolutely.
Danger if you do them, danger if you don't. Partly because there is survey fatigue.
Yeah.
You often get polarized views in surveys. People who respond to surveys say, I got something to say. A lot of people who are fine with things often just don't respond.
Yes.
Surveys are tricky because like a restaurant, you never know why the person left, and never came back from a meal they had. You don't have the reasons. So the goal here is to do our best to find a place and space where we can get to our community without fatigue of other surveys. And we need to map this out around other things we need to do as an organization. This is a good example where we want to do fewer surveys well than more surveys really thinly. So we're really going to think about a plan as to how we get through all of our groups, Parent Involvement Committee, our SEAC, our Indigenous Education Advisory, other school councils, to really get out to our communities and say, what is it that we're doing well? What are we not doing so well? And then look at the feedback and then build some focus groups off of that. But we haven't talked detail. We just wanted to balance what is a fairly quantitative objective, which is black and white in my mind, but I know it's easier said than done, with a more qualitative one that gets some feedback on our broader communications and public relations for an organization, which will actually feed some of the reasons why we are and aren't getting to the first target.
Sure.
And the other way around.
Survey fatigue is a real thing that the comms department has both internally and externally. So John did a survey for parents and guardians before he left, and it was on, I think it was last year. And it was on how parents would like to receive and like what their ideal way of, and we had 2 responses across the entire district. So it's really proven for us not to be an effective way of collecting information, mostly because we don't collect any information. And, we promote it on our social media, we promote it through school messenger. So every parent is getting it right to their inbox, and we still have that response rate. So, it will be a lot of figuring out how to get that information as well. And another way that it proves effective and beneficial for us to have that information, right? And what are we going to do with that information when we have it? We don't want to make parents and guardians and staff do particular, surveys or information collecting procedures, and then we don't do anything with those particular questions that we've been asking them. So yeah, it's an ongoing issue for sure.
Marjorie,
Yeah.
sorry. Sorry, I was wondering if an option would be focus groups used by many organizations rather than surveys.
Yeah, I think so, Marjorie. You raise a good point. The other one, there are some ways to get to our parents that are possible where it may gather attention. For instance, we're starting to look at our report cards through Renaud and Doug and the team. There are spots in the report card, cells that are left blank, that you can, as a district, manipulate what you put in there. And I don't know if we can do this, but one of the things running through my mind, parents do look at report cards often, and there is a feedback piece in the report card that goes with the school. Again, not filled by everyone, but interview times, that kind of thing. It's a time when parents are used to this two-way interaction. Whether we would use a cell there with a link, and I don't know if we can build a link right into cell to say, look, we're capturing feedback on our reach out to parents and guardians. Report cards are a traditional, well-known form of communication based on evaluation, but form of communication, and allow for a link in there where a parent might go at interview time and just, here's how my child is done, but I also have these ideas. Could I click there? So there are ways to get, as Hannah said, to everyone, which is what we want to do, rather than a skewed set of feedback from people on either polar ends. Thrilled with us and want to tell us, or really upset and also want us to know that we could explore. So I agree with Hannah, the response rate tends to be a struggle on many of these. And so we got to try to find a way to get at least a critical mass so we can work with what we get back, but not easy. And the timing, and it's also backed up against other surveys that we're either mandated to do by the ministry or we want to do. So when we get it out to people, is always a bit of a challenge.
Yes, I agree. Timing is really critical. And you're right, people are tired of surveys, I think, in so many ways. And the other piece around surveys too, if you're asking for input, then you've got to demonstrate you're doing something with it. You're right. There is an expectation then that something happens.
Yeah.
Whether or not they agree with it. So it's tricky, and I appreciate that it's in there, but I also know how challenging it is to actually get something that's useful.
And it's worth noting too that comms really goes on, what parents and guardians and the exec team and the board of trustees has deemed as kind of the way that we're going for programming or whatever it might be. So a lot of these surveys will be, program or school or system based, that comms will then be just executing as a
Mhm.
result of those changes or whatever it might be, right?
But you're right, piggybacking on other things, like through the report card or other opportunities, probably is one of the ways to go. The only other comment I had just jotted down was, and I think we've already talked about it, is how important it is to tell our story, and I think we've already talked about that, about how
Yes.
important it is to let the public know the good things that we are doing in the district, and
Yes.
you know, keep
And
them.
to see our staff in schools, right, as you comment on, it's really gonna be an exciting project for our staff who are there every day doing that work. You know, for if you're a student or a parent who's on social media and watching that video, to say, oh, that's Mrs. So-and-so, or that is a huge, and that was part of the, you know, the old or the former strategic plan that I know John had mentioned, is ensuring that our staff who are the face, you know, the people facing our students and our parents and guardians every day are included in that. So we're really looking forward to highlighting that and the great work that they're doing with our students.
And some of the schools are doing some of that themselves. I
That's
know
right.
RCI does a super job.
Right.
And I just love watching the videos of when
Some of our
they have
schools are
their
excellent.
teachers doing,
Yes.
you know, weird and wonderful things, or
Yes.
answering really funny questions. Like, it's great. It's
Yeah,
just
and
helps
Rockwood, if
out.
you're on Twitter, a lot of our schools do and our educators as well do an excellent job on Twitter. You know, Twitter is really the place to get a lot of that great classroom-based tweets from our staff, and it's a good spot to be to get that really good information. Yeah.
Okay, any other questions or comments on this report? It looks like there's lots of work to be done, but nice to see it all in one spot, and a sense of the direction that you're taking this. So I really, really appreciate that. Okay, there aren't any further comments or questions. I think maybe we've come to the, oh yes, I'll call on Chair Morris. So he's got a final wrap up, and then we'll adjourn.
And you've been with us, I know, a huge amount of time, but in that short time, you've made your mark, and you've become an immense presence here. And we
Thank you.
enjoy that with us, and keep on proving that we were very wise in hiring. So
Much
thank you so
appreciated.
much.
Thank you, Brian.
everything you do that was-
Thank you.
Thanks, Hannah. Okay, I would entertain a motion to adjourn from Marjorie Adam, and seconded by Mr. Gannett. All right, all in favor of adjourning? Okay, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for a great.